My name is Zoe, and I'm 34 years old. For the past 4 years, I've been living in what I thought was our dream home. A beautiful 3-story townhouse with enough space for everything we loved. What nobody in my husband's family knew was that I was the one paying $5,600 every single month to keep that roof over our heads. They all believed my husband Marcus was the provider, the man of the house, the one taking care of everything. And I let them believe it because I loved him and wanted to protect his pride. Until the day my mother-in-law told me I needed to leave so her older son could move in with his wife to start a family. Before I share what happened next, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Please hit that like button and subscribe because this story about family expectations and standing up for yourself might just change how you see things. Have you ever been in a situation where people assumed something about you that wasn't true and that assumption ended up hurting you? Drop a comment below because I want to hear your experiences. Now let me tell you how one dinner conversation turned my entire world upside down. I married Marcus 4 years ago after a whirlwind romance that felt like something out of a movie. We met at an art gallery downtown on a rainy Tuesday evening. I was there for work scouting design inspiration for a client's penthouse renovation, and he was there because he loved art more than anything in the world. Marcus taught high school art classes, pouring his heart into helping teenagers discover their creative voices. His annual salary was about $38,000, which wasn't much, but he loved what he did with a passion I admired deeply. I worked as a senior architect at Bennett Design Group, one of the most prestigious interior design firms in the city. My salary was $120,000 a year, sometimes more with bonuses. The difference in our incomes never mattered to me. What mattered was the way Marcus looked at the world, seeing beauty in things other people overlooked. The way he'd spend an entire Saturday afternoon painting while I worked on blueprints at the dining table, both of us content in our separate creative worlds that somehow fit together perfectly. Our first year of marriage was everything I'd hoped for. We'd wake up early on weekends to make pancakes together flour, ending up on our noses as we laughed over the stove. Marcus would sketch me while I read on the couch, claiming I was his favorite subject. We'd take drives through the countryside, stopping at roadside antique shops and tiny cafes that served the best pie I'd ever tasted. He was gentle, thoughtful, and completely devoted to making me happy. Or so I thought. Marcus came from a traditional family. His mother, Patricia, was 62 years old and had been widowed for 5 years after her husband died of a heart attack. She was the kind of woman who believed men should be the primary breadwinners that a husband's role was to provide, while a wife's role was to support. She never said it directly to me, but I could feel it in the way she talked about Marcus, always praising him as her wonderful son who took such good care of his wife. In the beginning, I didn't pay much attention to these comments. They seemed harmless, just a proud mother talking about her son. Patricia lived about 25 miles away in a smaller town, visiting us once or twice a month. She'd bring homemade cookies, ask about our lives, and tell stories about Marcus as a child. She was polite to me, though there was always a certain distance, like she was being cordial rather than genuinely warm. Marcus had an older brother named Derek who was 39 years old and worked as a sales manager for a pharmaceutical company. His wife, Stephanie, was 36 and worked as a nurse at a regional hospital. They'd been married for 3 years and were actively trying to have a baby. Every family gathering involved Patricia asking them about their progress, offering advice about fertility, and expressing her excitement about becoming a grandmother. Derek had a personality similar to Patricia's. He liked being the center of attention, often steering conversations back to himself and his accomplishments. As the older brother, he seemed to feel entitled to certain privileges like choosing where family dinners would be held or deciding which holidays we'd celebrate at whose house. Stephanie was more easygoing, though she always deferred to Derek's opinions. Our relationship was pleasant enough, the kind where we'd exchange pleasantries at family gatherings, but never really connected on a deeper level. The townhouse we lived in became available through a work connection. One of my clients was relocating overseas and needed to rent out her property quickly. It was a stunning 3-story townhouse with 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, hardwood floors throughout, and large windows that filled every room with natural light. The location was perfect, situated in a quiet neighborhood just 8 miles from my office and 12 miles from downtown. There was a small garden in back, a 2-car garage, and best of all, a spare room on the 3rd floor that Marcus could use as his art studio. The rent was steep at $5,600 per month, but I could afford it comfortably with my salary. The lease was in my name, and every month I transferred the payment directly from my personal checking account. Marcus contributed about $600 toward utilities and groceries, which was what he could manage on his teaching salary after his student loan payments and car insurance. I chose this house specifically because it gave us both space to thrive. My home office was set up in one of the bedrooms on the second floor, with custom shelving I'd designed myself for all my architecture books and design samples. Marcus had his studio upstairs where he could paint without worrying about getting anything messy. We were happy there, or at least I thought we were. What I didn't realize was that Marcus had let his family believe he was the one paying for everything. Looking back, I should have noticed the signs. Patricia would say things like, "Marcus, you've done so well providing such a beautiful home." Or Derek would make comments about how his little brother was really stepping up as a man. I always assumed Marcus would correct them, explain that we were partners who contributed differently, but he never did. The first real crack in my perception came one evening when Patricia called while we were having dinner. Marcus put her on speakerphone as he often did, chatting about his day at school while I cleared our plates. Patricia mentioned something about the beautiful house Marcus had rented for his wife and how proud she was that he could afford such a nice place on a teacher's salary. I looked at Marcus, waiting for him to explain the truth, but he just smiled and changed the subject to something about Derek's latest sales numbers. After he hung up, I asked him about it. "Why didn't you tell her I pay the rent?" His face flushed slightly and he looked down at his hands. "She's old-fashioned, Zoe. If she knew you made more than me, she'd think less of me as a man. I didn't want her disappointment. It's easier this way." I wanted to argue to tell him that lying by omission wasn't the answer, but I also understood the pressure he felt. Patricia had very specific ideas about gender roles, and Marcus had grown up trying to meet her expectations. So I let it go, telling myself it was a harmless white lie that protected his dignity. I had no idea how much that decision would cost me later. About 3 weeks after that phone call, Patricia announced she was coming for a weekend visit. It was early November, and the weather had just started turning cold. I spent Saturday morning cleaning the house and preparing a nice lunch, trying to be a good daughter-in-law, despite the growing unease I felt about the unspoken lie between us. Patricia arrived around noon, carrying a tin of her famous chocolate chip cookies and a bottle of wine. She hugged Marcus warmly, then gave me a polite kiss on the cheek. We settled in the living room with coffee, and that's when things started feeling strange. Patricia kept looking around the house with an appraising eye, as if she were seeing it for the first time, even though she'd visited several times before. She commented on the high ceilings, the crown molding the expensive light fixtures. "Marcus really did pick out a wonderful place," she said, smiling at him with obvious pride. "You always had such good taste, even as a boy." I felt my jaw tighten, but I forced a smile and sipped my coffee. The conversation drifted to other topics, work and family gossip, until Patricia brought up Derek and Stephanie. "Have you two heard they're having trouble finding a bigger place? Their one-bedroom apartment is so cramped, and they really need more space if they're going to start a family properly." Marcus made a sympathetic sound. "That's tough. The rental market is pretty competitive right now." Patricia leaned forward, her eyes lighting up with an idea that I immediately sensed would be problematic. "Well, that's what I wanted to talk to you both about. This house has 4 bedrooms, doesn't it? That's so much space for just the two of you. Have you ever thought about what you'd do with all these extra rooms?" I felt a cold sensation creeping up my spine. Where was she going with this? Marcus seemed oblivious, just nodding along. "We like having the space. I use one room as my office, and Marcus has his studio upstairs." Patricia waved her hand dismissively. "Yes, but practically speaking, it's more house than you need. Derek and Stephanie, on the other hand, they're about to start a family. They need space for a nursery for all the baby equipment. Their current apartment just won't work." I set my coffee cup down carefully, trying to keep my voice level. "I'm sure they'll find something suitable. There are lots of family-friendly neighborhoods around here." Patricia looked at me as if I'd missed the obvious point. "But why should they struggle to find something when there's a perfectly good solution right here?" She turned to Marcus. "Honey, don't you think you could help your brother out? You've been so generous paying for this beautiful home. Maybe Derek and Stephanie could move in here where there's actually room for a baby, and you and Zoe could find something smaller, more appropriate for just a couple." The room went silent except for the ticking of the clock on the mantel. I stared at Patricia, unable to believe what I was hearing. She wanted us to give up our home so Derek and Stephanie could have it, and she was saying this as if it were the most reasonable suggestion in the world. Marcus cleared his throat uncomfortably. Mom, that's a big decision. We'd have to think about it. Patricia smiled, patting his hand. Of course, of course. I'm not saying it has to happen tomorrow. I just think it makes sense from a family perspective. Derek is the oldest. He's ready to start the next generation. It's only natural that he'd get priority for the family resources. Family resources. This was my home paid for with my money, and she was talking about it like it was some communal property to be redistributed according to birth order. I opened my mouth to say something, but Marcus caught my eye and gave me a pleading look. So I swallowed my words and excused myself to the kitchen, gripping the counter until my knuckles turned white. When Patricia finally left that evening, I confronted Marcus immediately. You need to tell your mother the truth. This is my house. I pay for it. She can't just decide to give it to Derek. Marcus rubbed his face tiredly. I know. You're right. I'll talk to her soon, I promise. I just need to find the right time. You know how she is. But he never found the right time. Days turned into weeks, and the subject wasn't brought up again until Patricia called about 2 weeks later. I was working in my home office when I heard Marcus talking on the phone downstairs. His voice was low and tense the way it got when he was uncomfortable. I heard him say things like, I'll think about it and let me discuss it with Zoe and maybe there's a compromise. When he came upstairs afterward, I asked what that was about. He hesitated, then admitted Patricia had brought up the house situation again. She even found a one-bedroom apartment for us that only costs $1,800 a month. She thinks it would be perfect while Derek and Stephanie get settled here. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She's already looking at apartments for us. Marcus, this is insane. You need to stop this now. He held up his hands defensively. I didn't agree to anything, I just said I'd think about it. That's not a commitment. But that's the problem. Saying you'll think about it makes her believe it's possible. You need to tell her no clearly and directly, and you need to tell her I'm the one who pays the rent. Marcus looked miserable. Can we please not make this a bigger deal than it has to be? I'll handle it. I just need some time to figure out how to explain everything to her without making her feel like I've been lying to her. But you have been lying to her. We both have, by letting her believe something that isn't true. That night, we barely spoke. Marcus retreated to his studio, and I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling like a stranger in my own home. Something had shifted between us, a crack in the foundation that I didn't know how to repair. The situation escalated faster than I could have imagined. 3 weeks later, on a Saturday afternoon, when I'd just gotten home from meeting with a client, I pulled into our driveway and saw 3 cars parked on the street. Patricia's sedan, Derek's SUV, and a white van with a company logo I didn't recognize. My stomach dropped. I hadn't known anyone was coming over today. Marcus hadn't mentioned anything about visitors. I grabbed my bag and walked up to the front door, which was standing wide open. Voices drifted out from inside, cheerful and animated. I stepped into my own home to find it full of people. Patricia was in the living room with a man holding a tape measure and a clipboard. Derek and Stephanie were upstairs, their footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors, and Marcus was in the kitchen looking like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Patricia saw me first. Oh, Zoe, perfect timing. This is Mr. Chen from Precision Measurements. We're just getting some dimensions for furniture arrangements. I set my bag down slowly, trying to process what was happening. Furniture arrangements? For what? Patricia smiled brightly as if the answer were obvious. For when Derek and Stephanie move in, of course. We want to make sure everything fits properly, especially in the room that will become the nursery. Mr. Chen came highly recommended. He does wonderful space planning. The man with the tape measure nodded at me politely and continued measuring the width of our living room window. Derek and Stephanie came down the stairs at that moment, Stephanie carrying a notebook and Derek holding a furniture catalog. This room would be perfect for a crib by the window, Stephanie was saying. We could put a rocking chair in that corner and there's enough space for a changing table along this wall. I looked at Marcus, who was standing frozen by the kitchen counter, his face pale. Nobody seemed to notice or care that I was the one who actually lived here, the one who paid for every square foot they were measuring and planning to rearrange. Something inside me snapped. Excuse me, but what exactly is going on here? Patricia turned to me with mild surprise, as if I'd asked a strange question. I told you, dear, we're planning for Derek and Stephanie's move. They'll need time to get furniture, paint the nursery, all those preparations. It's better to start early. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. Patricia, we've never agreed to move out. This is our home. She waved her hand dismissively. Marcus said he'd think about it, which means he's considering it. And really, it's the most practical solution. You two don't need all this space. Derek and Stephanie are about to start a family. They need room for a baby for all the equipment babies require. It's only fair that the person who's actually going to use the space properly should have it. Fair. The word echoed in my mind. What was fair about expecting me to give up the home I paid for so someone else could use it? I turned to Marcus again. Tell them the truth right now. Marcus looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Derek was watching us with growing confusion, and Stephanie had stopped writing in her notebook. Marcus, I said more firmly, tell your family who pays the rent for this house. His voice came out barely above a whisper. Zoe does. Zoe pays the rent. The room went completely silent. Even Mr. Chin stopped measuring and looked up. Patricia's smile faltered for just a moment before returning, though it looked more forced now. Well, that's very generous of you, Zoe, but surely Marcus contributes significantly as well. Marriage is a partnership after all. I shook my head slowly. No, I pay $5,600 every month for rent. My name is on the lease. The payments come directly from my account. Marcus contributes to groceries and utilities, but this house, this home that you're measuring and planning to give to Derek, belongs to me in every legal sense. Derek let out a harsh laugh. Come on, that's ridiculous. You're just saying that to avoid looking bad. Everyone knows Marcus is the one who provides. Actually, I make $120,000 a year as a senior architect. Marcus makes $38,000 as a teacher. I could show you my bank statements if you'd like proof. Patricia's face had gone from surprised to embarrassed to something harder to read. She looked at Marcus. Is this true? All this time you let me believe you were the one taking care of everything. Marcus finally found his voice, though it shook. I didn't want you to think less of me, Mom. I knew you'd be disappointed if you knew Zoe made more money. Patricia pressed her lips together tightly, then seemed to shake off her discomfort. Well, this is certainly unexpected. She paused, then incredibly continued. But regardless of who pays, the situation remains the same. Derek and Stephanie need this space more than you and Zoe do. They're about to become parents. Surely you can understand that family comes first. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Even after learning the truth, she still expected me to give up my home. Stephanie looked uncomfortable now, glancing between Patricia and me. Mrs. Chin, maybe we should go. This seems like something they need to discuss privately. Patricia ignored her, her attention still on Marcus. Your brother has been waiting his whole life to become a father. This is his chance. You're younger, you have time. Surely you can be flexible about where you live for a few years while Derek and Stephanie get established. I looked at Marcus, waiting for him to defend me, to tell his mother this was unacceptable to set boundaries like a husband should. But he just stood there looking torn and miserable. Finally, he said the words that broke something inside me. Zoe, maybe we could consider it. Just temporarily. Family is important, and if Derek really needs the space, that was it. That was the moment I knew nothing would ever be the same. My own husband was asking me to give up my home to sacrifice my comfort and security because his family had decided someone else deserved it more. And he'd made this suggestion without even defending me first, without acknowledging how absurd and unfair this entire situation was. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I simply said, I need everyone to leave my house right now. Patricia, Derek, Stephanie, Mr. Chin, please go. Marcus and I need to talk. Patricia opened her mouth to argue, but something in my expression must have stopped her. She gathered her purse and ushered everyone toward the door. Derek gave me an angry look, and Stephanie mumbled an apology I barely heard. Mr. Chin packed up his measuring equipment quickly and scurried out. When the door closed behind them, Marcus and I stood in the silence of our living room. He tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled away. Zoe, I'm sorry. I didn't know they were coming today. I didn't know Mom had called a measurement service. This got out of hand. This got out of hand the moment you let your mother believe you were something you're not. This got out of hand when you didn't defend me not once through this entire nightmare. This got out of hand when you asked me to consider giving up my own home because your family thinks someone else deserves it more. I just. He started, then stopped. I don't know what to do. They're my family. And I'm your wife. That night was one of the longest of my life. I barely slept lying next to Marcus, who was on the opposite edge of our king-size bed, both of us pretending to be asleep, while my mind raced through everything that had happened. By the time weak November sunlight started filtering through the curtains around 6 in the morning, I'd made my decision. I got up quietly and went downstairs to my home office. I opened my laptop and started researching with a methodical focus that surprised even me. I was hurt. I was angry, but beneath those emotions was something clearer and colder: determination. First, I looked up moving companies. I found one called Alpha Moving Services with excellent reviews and 24-hour availability. Then I searched for apartments. I needed something available immediately, something I could afford comfortably, and something that would be entirely mine. After an hour of searching, I found it. A 2-bedroom apartment on the 12th floor of a modern building downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows with a city view updated kitchen in unit washer and dryer and a monthly rent of $4,200. It was available immediately with the first month offered at a discount for quick move-in. I called the leasing office as soon as they opened at 8 in the morning. Yes, I'm interested in the unit on the 12th floor. Is it still available? Can I put down a deposit today? The leasing agent, a friendly woman named Lisa, confirmed it was available and seemed delighted by my urgency. We can have everything ready for you by this weekend if you can come in today to sign the paperwork and provide first month's rent plus security deposit. I'll be there at 10, and I meant it. Next, I pulled up my current lease agreement for the townhouse and read through it carefully. There was a clause about early termination. I could cancel with 30 days' notice, though I'd forfeit my security deposit. That was fine. It was worth it to get out of this situation. I called the landlord, Mr. Henderson, a retired architect who'd moved to Spain but maintained several properties in the area through a management company. We'd always had a good relationship, chatting about design whenever we ran into each other during his visits back to the States. Mr. Henderson, this is Zoe Matthews. I need to terminate my lease on the townhouse. There was a surprised pause. Is everything all right? Is there a problem with the property? No, the house has been perfect. This is entirely personal circumstances. I'll give you the full 30 days' notice as required by the contract, and I understand I'll lose the security deposit. He sighed regretfully. That's a shame. You've been an excellent tenant. All right, I'll have the management company draw up the termination paperwork. Your last day will be exactly 30 days from today. Thank you. I'll make sure the house is in perfect condition when I leave. After I hung up, I sat for a moment staring at my phone. There was no going back now. I'd set everything in motion. Part of me expected to feel scared or uncertain, but instead, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. I was taking control of my life again. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Marcus came down looking exhausted and worried. He was still in his pajamas, his hair sticking up at odd angles. Zoe, what are you doing up so early? I closed my laptop and looked at him directly. I'm moving out. I've already called a moving company, found a new apartment, and terminated the lease on this house. His face went white. What? Zoe, please. Let's talk about this. You're upset, I understand, but we can work this out. I stood up and walked past him to the kitchen, needing coffee for the long day ahead. There's nothing to work out, Marcus. Your family made it very clear that they don't respect me or my contributions, and you made it very clear that you won't stand up for me when it matters most. That's not fair. I was put in an impossible situation. I turned to face him and I felt tears threatening but pushed them back. No, Marcus. You put yourself in that impossible situation by lying to your family for 4 years. You let them believe you were someone you're not, and when the truth came out, you still chose their comfort over mine. You asked me to consider giving up my home because it would be convenient for Derek. I didn't mean it like that, he protested weakly. It doesn't matter how you meant it. What matters is what you said and what you didn't say. You didn't tell your mother that her request was unreasonable. You didn't tell Derek and Stephanie they were out of line. You didn't protect me or our home. So, I'm protecting myself. The coffee maker beeped and I poured myself a cup with hands that were surprisingly steady. Marcus stood there watching me, tears now running down his face. Are you leaving me? Are we getting divorced? I don't know yet. I haven't decided about our marriage, but I absolutely know I'm not living in this house anymore, not after what happened. You have 30 days to figure out what you're going to do about rent because I won't be paying it. And for what it's worth, I hope you use this time to think about who you want to be, not who your mother expects you to be. He tried to argue more to convince me to slow down and reconsider, but I'd already mentally moved on. I went upstairs, got dressed, and left for my appointment at the leasing office. By noon, I'd signed the papers for my new apartment and transferred the deposit. By 3 in the afternoon, Alpha Moving Services had confirmed they could help me pack and move that coming Saturday, just 6 days away. When I got home that evening, Marcus's mom's car was in the driveway again. My heart sank, but I steeled myself and walked inside. Patricia was sitting on our couch, and Marcus was across from her in the armchair looking defeated. Patricia stood up when she saw me. Zoe, Marcus told me what you're planning. This is ridiculous. You can't just leave over a simple misunderstanding. A simple misunderstanding. You measured my house to give it to someone else. You dismissed the fact that I pay for it. You prioritized your older son's comfort over your younger son's wife. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a clear statement of your values. Patricia's face flushed. I was trying to help my family. Derek and Stephanie need space for a baby. You don't even have children. What do you need 4 bedrooms for? It doesn't matter what I need them for. This is my home. I chose it, I pay for it, and I have every right to live in it without being told I should give it up because someone else might use it differently. Patricia looked at Marcus desperately. Tell her she's being unreasonable. Tell her she needs to think about family. Marcus looked at me, then at his mother, then down at his hands. He said nothing. And in that silence, Patricia finally seemed to understand that this wasn't going to go the way she'd planned. Fine. If you want to be selfish about this, that's your choice. But don't expect this family to welcome you back with open arms after you've shown your true colors. I picked up my purse and headed for the stairs. I need to pack. Please let yourself out when you're finished talking to your son. Over the next few days, our house became a strange kind of battlefield of silence. Marcus tried several times to engage me in conversation to convince me I was overreacting to promise he'd do better. But I'd heard promises before, and they'd never materialized into actual change. I kept packing methodically, sorting through 4 years of shared life and dividing it into mine and his. Derek called my cell phone on Wednesday evening. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Zoe, this is Derek. Listen, Stephanie and I want to apologize. We didn't know about the rent situation. We thought Marcus was the one paying for everything. Mom told us he'd already agreed to let us move in, and we believed her. I appreciated the apology, but it didn't change anything. Even if you didn't know Derek, what made you think it was acceptable to just take over someone else's home? Did you ever stop to think how that might feel? He was quiet for a moment. Honestly, no. I just assumed Marcus would be okay with it because we're family. I see now that was wrong. But Zoe, please don't leave Marcus over this. He's a mess. He really loves you. If he loves me, he'll figure out how to show it. Right now, I need space. Thursday brought more phone calls, this time from Stephanie. She was gentler in her approach, almost pleading. I never meant to cause problems in your marriage. I just got excited about the idea of a bigger place for when we have a baby. I should have questioned it more. I'm sorry. I believed she was genuinely sorry, but I also knew that apologies after the fact didn't undo the damage. People's first instincts reveal their true characters, and their first instinct had been to assume they deserved my home more than I did. Friday evening, Marcus came home from school with red eyes. He'd clearly been crying. Zoe, please, one more chance. I've thought a lot about what you said. You're right about everything. I should have been honest with my family from the start. I should have defended you. I should have set boundaries. I'm willing to go to counseling. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I was packing up my bathroom essentials, wrapping bottles, and organizing them into boxes. I believe that you're sorry. I believe you want to change. But I've spent 4 years watching you struggle to stand up to your mother and nothing ever changed. Words aren't enough anymore. I need to see actual sustained change before I can trust you again. So this is it. "We're done." I didn't say that. I said I need space. You have 30 days to figure out how you're going to handle the rent on this house without me. You have as long as you need to figure out how to be the kind of partner who doesn't sacrifice his wife's well-being to keep his mother happy. And when you've figured those things out, maybe we can talk about whether there's still a marriage worth saving. That night, Marcus slept in the guest room. I could hear him crying through the walls, and part of me wanted to go comfort him. But I knew that if I gave in now, nothing would ever change. Sometimes, love means letting someone face the consequences of their choices. Saturday morning arrived cold and gray, matching my mood. The Alpha Moving Services truck pulled up at 8 in the morning sharp, just as promised. Two movers named Kevin and Marcus, which felt like a cruel irony, started carrying boxes down the stairs while I directed them on what was mine and what was staying. By 9 o'clock, Marcus's family had somehow gotten word that moving day was actually happening. Patricia's car pulled up first, followed by Derek and Stephanie in their SUV. They stood on the lawn watching as my furniture, my boxes, my life was loaded into the truck. Patricia tried one last time. "Zoe, please, don't do this. We can all sit down and work this out like adults." I was carrying a box of books to the truck. I paused and looked at her directly. "Patricia, you asked me to give up my home. Even after learning I was the one paying for it, you still thought I should be the one to leave. That tells me everything I need to know about how you value me as part of this family." Derek stepped forward. "We already apologized. What more do you want? I want you to understand why this was wrong. Not just say you're sorry because it didn't work out the way you planned. I want Marcus to choose me over keeping you comfortable. But I don't think any of that is going to happen, at least not today." Stephanie was crying now, standing next to Derek with her arms wrapped around herself. "I never wanted this. I never wanted to ruin your marriage. You didn't ruin my marriage. The marriage was already broken. You just helped me see it clearly." Marcus came out of the house, then carrying one of my framed architectural drawings. He looked at his family, then at me, then at the truck that was gradually filling with my belongings. His mother tried to say something to him, but he shook his head and kept walking, loading my frame carefully into the truck. For the next 2 hours, Marcus helped the movers carry my things out. He didn't speak to his family, who eventually got back in their cars and left Patricia looking devastated and Derek looking angry. When the last box was loaded, I stood in the doorway of the townhouse one final time, looking at the space that had been my dream home. Marcus stood beside me, not close enough to touch, but close enough that I could feel his presence. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for everything, for all of it. I know you probably don't believe me, but I really am. I know you are, but sorry doesn't fix this. Only time and change can do that. Where are you going? Can I at least know where you'll be? I'm not ready to share that yet. I need this space to be completely mine for a while. But I'm not disappearing forever. I just need time." He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I love you, Zoe." I looked at him, at the man I'd married 4 years ago, and felt a complicated mixture of love and disappointment and sadness. "I love you too, but love isn't enough when respect and partnership are missing." I got into my car and followed the moving truck to my new apartment downtown. I didn't look back at the townhouse, didn't let myself think about the life I was leaving behind. I focused on the road ahead, literal and metaphorical, and the future I was going to build for myself. Moving into the 12th floor apartment felt surreal. The movers brought everything up in the freight elevator, and I directed them to place furniture in rooms that suddenly felt both empty and full of possibility. My bed in the master bedroom. My desk in the second bedroom that would be my home office. My couch facing those floor-to-ceiling windows with their view of the city skyline. When the movers left and I was finally alone, I stood in my living room and cried. Not because I regretted my decision, but because endings are painful even when they're necessary. I grieved for the marriage I'd thought I had, for the partnership I'd believed in, for the trust that had been broken. But underneath the grief was something else. Relief. And underneath the relief was the beginning of pride. I'd stood up for myself. I'd refused to be treated as less important, less valuable, less deserving of respect. I'd taken control of my life instead of waiting for someone else to decide my worth. The first week in my new apartment was harder than I'd expected. I'd turned to share something with Marcus before remembering he wasn't there. I'd start to cook dinner for 2 before catching myself. The silence was both peaceful and lonely, a strange combination that left me feeling unmoored. But gradually, I started to find a rhythm. I'd wake up early and watch the sunrise over the city from my 12th floor windows, drinking coffee without anyone asking me to explain my plans for the day. I'd go to work and focus entirely on my projects without the distraction of family drama waiting for me at home. I'd come back to my apartment and know that no one would show up unexpectedly to measure my space or suggest I should live somewhere smaller. I turned off notifications from Marcus and his family for the first few days. I needed complete separation to think clearly. But by Wednesday of that first week, I checked my phone and found 17 missed calls and dozens of text messages. Most were from Marcus variations on the same theme. I miss you. I'm sorry. Please call me. Can we talk? There were several from Patricia which surprised me. Zoe. I've been thinking about what you said. Can we please talk? And later, I realized I was wrong. I'm sorry for how I treated you. Derek and Stephanie had sent a joint message. We found our own place. We want you to know we're not trying to take your home anymore. We're really sorry. I didn't respond to any of them. Not yet. I needed more time. At work, my colleagues started noticing changes in me. My friend Amanda, who worked in the design department down the hall, invited me to lunch on Thursday. Over salads at a cafe near our office, she studied my face carefully. You look different. Lighter somehow, but also sad. What's going on? I hesitated, then found myself telling her everything. The whole story spilled out from the lie about Marcus paying rent to Patricia's demands to my decision to leave. Amanda listened without interrupting her expression, shifting from surprise to anger to understanding. When I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You did the right thing. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you did. Nobody should make you feel like a guest in your own home. I know. Intellectually, I know that. But it still hurts. Of course it hurts. You loved him. You thought you were building a life together. Finding out he wouldn't prioritize you when it mattered is a betrayal even if he didn't mean it that way. Amanda's validation meant more than I'd expected. Having someone outside the situation confirm I wasn't being dramatic or selfish helped quiet some of the doubts that crept in during lonely evenings. She invited me to join her yoga class, which met Tuesday and Thursday evenings at a studio 3 blocks from my apartment. I'm not really the yoga type, I protested, but she insisted. Trust me, it helps. That Thursday, I found myself in a room full of women of various ages, all of us moving through poses, while an instructor with a soothing voice talked about finding balance and peace within ourselves. I was terrible at it, my architect's mind too busy analyzing angles and alignment to properly meditate. But there was something calming about the ritual, about dedicating an hour to focusing on my breath and my body instead of my racing thoughts. After class, Amanda introduced me to a few of the regulars. This is Jennifer, she works in marketing. And this is Kate, she's a lawyer. And this is Carmen, she teaches elementary school. Jennifer was about my age, maybe a year or two older, with kind eyes and an easy smile. She and I ended up walking out together, and when she heard I'd just moved to the area, she offered to show me the best coffee shop nearby. Over coffee that turned into a 2-hour conversation, I learned that Jennifer had been divorced for 3 years. Her ex-husband had been emotionally unavailable, always prioritizing his mother's opinions over their marriage. The parallels to my situation were striking. It gets easier, she told me. The first few months are the hardest because you're grieving what you thought you had. But eventually you realize you're better off. You start to remember who you were before you were constantly making yourself smaller to fit someone else's expectations. Her words resonated deeply. I realized I had been making myself smaller, staying quiet about the rent situation, accepting Patricia's dismissive comments, allowing Marcus to avoid difficult conversations with his family. All in the name of keeping peace, but at the cost of my own self-respect. By the second week, I started responding to some messages. I texted Derek and Stephanie back. I appreciate the apology. I hope you find a place that works well for you both. I kept it brief and formal, not encouraging further conversation, but acknowledging their attempt to make amends. I left Patricia's messages unanswered for longer. Her apology, while seemingly sincere, felt too little too late. She'd only reconsidered her position after facing consequences, not because she'd genuinely understood why her request had been so hurtful. Marcus's messages were the hardest to read. He was clearly struggling. The townhouse feels empty without you. I had to meet with Mr. Henderson today about the rent. Derek offered to move in and split it with me. We're looking for someone to take the third bedroom to help cover costs. It's not the same. Nothing is the same. At the start of my third week alone, my boss called me into her office. Zoe, I've been impressed with your focus lately. You've been producing excellent work. I'm promoting you to Senior Design Director. It comes with a salary increase to $145,000 annually and your own team. I was stunned. A promotion hadn't even been on my radar with everything else happening in my life. Thank you. I don't know what to say. She smiled warmly. Say you'll take your team out to celebrate. You've earned this. The promotion felt like validation from the universe. While my personal life was in chaos, my professional life was thriving. I was being recognized for my actual contributions, my skills and hard work, without needing to hide or diminish them to protect someone else's ego. That evening, I took myself out to dinner at a nice restaurant I'd always wanted to try. I sat alone at a table by the window, ordered the most expensive entree, and toasted myself with a glass of wine. To new beginnings, I whispered, watching the city lights twinkle below. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. How was your day? I got promoted, I typed back. Her response was immediate. That's amazing. We're celebrating. Yoga crew is going out Saturday night. You're coming. Saturday night out with my new friends turned into one of the best evenings I'd had in months. We went to a rooftop bar, laughed until my stomach hurt, and shared stories about everything from bad first dates to career victories. For the first time since leaving Marcus, I felt genuinely happy rather than just numb or sad. Jennifer pulled me aside at one point. You're glowing. I know everything feels hard right now, but you're going to be okay. Better than okay. I hugged her, grateful for this unexpected friendship that had appeared exactly when I needed it. Thank you for including me in your life, she grinned. Thank you for letting me. Now come on. Kate is trying to convince the bartender to make her a drink that isn't on the menu, and we need to see how this plays out. By the end of my first month in the new apartment, I'd established a routine that felt sustainable. Work was fulfilling and challenging in the best way. My Tuesday and Thursday yoga classes had become a non-negotiable part of my week. Weekend brunches with Jennifer and the group gave me something to look forward to. I'd even started sketching again, something I'd loved in college but had abandoned somewhere along the way. The apartment that had felt so empty at first was gradually becoming home. I'd hung my favorite architectural drawings on the walls, arranged my furniture exactly how I wanted it, and created a workspace that inspired rather than constrained me. The view from my windows never got old, the way the city transformed from dawn to dusk, a constant reminder that life was full of beautiful changes. Marcus continued to text periodically. I've started seeing a therapist. We're working on boundaries and family dynamics. I miss you every day. I understand if you've moved on, but I hope you haven't. I hadn't moved on, not in the way he probably feared. I hadn't dated anyone else or even considered it. But I had moved forward, building a life that was fuller and more authentic than the one I'd left behind. And in doing so, I'd discovered something important. I didn't need Marcus to be complete. I'd been complete all along. 3 months after I'd moved out, Marcus finally asked to meet in person. Can we have coffee? Just talk face to face. I promise I won't pressure you about anything. I just want to see you. I agreed, partly because I was curious about whether he'd actually changed, and partly because I knew I couldn't avoid this conversation forever. We met at a neutral location, a coffee shop halfway between my apartment and the townhouse, on a Sunday afternoon. He looked different when he walked in, thinner with shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. But there was also something else, something harder to define. He seemed more present, somehow more grounded than I remembered. We ordered our drinks and sat at a table by the window. For a moment, neither of us knew how to start. Then Marcus took a deep breath and began. I've been going to therapy twice a week. My therapist has helped me understand a lot about my relationship with my family, particularly with my mom. I've spent my whole life trying to earn her approval by being the man she wanted me to be, instead of being myself. And in doing that, I failed you completely. I listened without interrupting, cradling my coffee cup between my hands. I called a family meeting 6 weeks ago. I told Mom, Derek, and Stephanie everything. I explained that I'd lied about paying rent because I was ashamed of making less money than you. I told them how their expectations had made me feel inadequate. and I set boundaries. Real ones, like what I asked quietly. Like no more unannounced visits. Like not making decisions about my life without consulting me first. Like respecting you as my wife and equal partner regardless of who makes more money. Mom didn't take it well at first. She cried and said I was choosing you over family, but I told her that you are my family and that she needed to accept that or we couldn't have a relationship. How did she respond? Marcus smiled sadly. She hung up on me. Didn't talk to me for 2 weeks, but then she called back and apologized. We're working on rebuilding our relationship, but it's different now. I'm not the little boy trying to please her anymore. What about Derek? He was actually more understanding than I expected. He said he'd been thinking a lot about what happened, and he realized he'd taken advantage of my inability to say no. He and Stephanie found a 3-bedroom house to rent in a different neighborhood. They're doing fine. I took a sip of my coffee processing all of this. That sounds like real progress. It is. But Zoe, I need you to know that I'm not doing this to win you back. I mean, I hope it helps, but I'm doing it because I finally understand that I need to be a whole person on my own before I can be a good partner to anyone. My therapist keeps saying you can't pour from an empty cup, and mine has been empty for a long time. We talked for 2 hours that afternoon. Marcus told me about the struggles of managing rent on the townhouse, how he and Derek were both counting down the days until the lease ended in 3 months so they could find something more affordable. He told me about difficult conversations with Patricia where he'd had to hold firm even when she cried or tried to guilt him. He told me about discovering he actually enjoyed setting boundaries, how freeing it felt to be honest about his limitations and needs. I told him about my promotion, my new friends, my yoga classes. I told him about learning to be comfortable in my own company, about rediscovering parts of myself I'd forgotten existed. I told him that while I was proud of the changes he was making, I still wasn't sure what that meant for us. "I'm not asking you to decide anything today," he said as we prepared to leave. "I just wanted you to know that I'm working on myself and that I understand why you left. You deserved better than what I gave you, and I'm trying to become someone who could actually be the partner you need." We hugged goodbye in the parking lot, and for the first time in months, it didn't feel painful. It felt like closure, or maybe like a door that had been slammed shut was opening just a crack, letting in a sliver of light. Over the next 3 months, Marcus and I maintained sporadic contact. We'd text every couple of weeks, brief exchanges about our lives that were friendly but not intimate. He never pushed for more, and I appreciated his restraint. He was letting me set the pace, which was something he'd never done before. Jennifer and I had become close friends, the kind who could sit in comfortable silence or talk for hours depending on the mood. One evening over dinner at her apartment, she asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Do you think you'll get back together with him?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to believe people can change. He seems genuinely different, but another part of me remembers how alone I felt in that townhouse, how dismissed and undervalued. I'm not sure I can risk feeling that way again." She nodded thoughtfully. "You know what I learned from my divorce. It's okay to love someone and still choose not to be with them. Love doesn't obligate you to sacrifice your peace." Her words stayed with me. I did love Marcus, probably always would in some way, but I also loved the life I'd built for myself, the independence and self-respect I'd reclaimed. Was there a version of our relationship where I could have both? I wasn't sure. 6 months after our separation, Marcus texted with news. "The lease on the townhouse is ending. Derek and I are moving out next week. I found a 1-bedroom apartment near the school where I teach. It's small, but it's mine paid for with my salary. No more lying, no more pretending. Thought you'd want to know. I'm proud of you," I texted back. "That takes courage." His response came an hour later. "I learned courage from watching you walk away when you needed to. Thank you for that lesson, even though it was the hardest one I've ever had." Now, sitting in my apartment 9 months after I'd left, watching the city lights reflect off the windows as evening settles over downtown, I find myself thinking about courage and change and the complicated nature of love. The first few months after leaving were consumed by pain and grief. I cried more than I'd expected, mourned the future I'd imagined, and questioned whether I'd made the right choice. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, that grief transformed into something else. Relief. Then pride. Then a quiet kind of joy I hadn't experienced in years. I learned to love being alone, to appreciate the silence that had once felt oppressive. I learned that I didn't need someone else to validate my worth or my choices. I learned that standing up for myself wasn't selfish, it was necessary. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is let them face the consequences of their actions without rushing in to fix things. My career has flourished in ways I never anticipated. As senior design director, I lead a team of 6 talented designers on projects that challenge and excite me. Last month, we won a major contract to redesign a historic hotel downtown, the kind of project I've dreamed about since architecture school. My colleagues respect me, my ideas are valued, and I no longer feel the need to downplay my success to make someone else comfortable. My friendships have deepened too. Jennifer and I are planning a trip together next spring, just the two of us exploring coastal towns and eating too much seafood. The yoga group has become my chosen family women who celebrate my victories and support me through difficult days without judgment or expectation. As for Marcus, I saw him last week. We met for coffee again, our third such meeting since the separation. He's living in his small apartment teaching his art classes and apparently dating his therapist's recommendation that he stay single for at least a year before pursuing another relationship. He seems lighter, somehow more comfortable in his own skin. We laughed together about a memory from early in our marriage, and it didn't hurt the way I'd expected it to. "Are you happy?" he asked me as we walked to our cars. "I am." "Are you getting there?" "It's hard sometimes, but it's honest. That's worth something." We haven't made any decisions about our future, whether we'll try again or make the separation permanent. Right now, we're both focused on becoming whole people individually. Maybe someday we'll find our way back to each other. Maybe we won't. Either way, I'll be okay. What I've learned through this entire experience is that home isn't just a physical space you pay rent for. It's not about whose name is on the lease or who makes more money or whose family thinks they deserve what. Home is where you feel safe to be completely yourself, where your contributions are valued and your boundaries are respected, where love doesn't require you to diminish your light so others can shine brighter. For 4 years, I let myself believe that love meant compromise, even when that compromise cost me my self-respect. I let Marcus's fear of disappointing his mother become more important than my need to feel valued in my own home. I stayed silent about the rent situation because I didn't want to embarrass him, never considering that his embarrassment was rooted in outdated ideas about masculinity that hurt us both. Patricia called me 2 months ago. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. She apologized, really apologized this time, without excuses or explanations about what she'd intended. She said she'd been in therapy too, working on why she felt entitled to control her adult children's lives. She asked if we could have coffee sometime, not to talk about Marcus or our marriage, but just to talk. I told her I'd think about it. I'm still thinking. Derek and Stephanie had their baby last month, a little girl they named Emma. Stephanie sent me a birth announcement with a handwritten note. "I know things are complicated, but I wanted you to know. Emma is healthy and perfect. I hope you're doing well." It was a kind gesture acknowledging the past without trying to fix it or pretend it didn't happen. I sent flowers and a gift card, keeping my response warm but boundaried. The townhouse where all of this began has new tenants now, a young family with 2 kids and a dog. I drove past it once out of curiosity and felt nothing. No regret, no longing, no pain. It was just a building, bricks and windows, and a door I'd once walked through. All the emotion I'd attached to it had dissolved, leaving only the lesson behind. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who don't see your worth, even when those people are family. Especially when those people are family, because family dynamics can be the most complicated and the hardest to change. I learned that staying in a situation that diminishes you doesn't make you loyal or loving. It makes you complicit in your own unhappiness. I learned that home isn't just a place you pay for. It's where you feel valued, respected, and free to be yourself. And if you can't find that with others, you build it within yourself first. Once you've built that internal home, that place of self-respect and self-love, you can invite others in, but you never again allow anyone to make you feel like a guest in your own life. The city lights are fully illuminated now, thousands of windows glowing against the dark sky. Somewhere out there, Marcus is in his small apartment, probably grading papers or sketching in the art journal his therapist suggested he keep. Somewhere else, Patricia is learning to let her adult children make their own choices. Derek and Stephanie are navigating new parenthood, and I'm here in my apartment on the 12th floor, finally at home in my own skin. The future is uncertain. Maybe Marcus and I will find our way back to each other once we've both done the work we need to do. Maybe we'll remain friendly exes who occasionally have coffee and check in on each other's lives. Maybe we'll drift apart completely as we build separate futures. All of those outcomes are okay because I know now that my happiness doesn't depend on him or anyone else. It depends on me, on the choices I make every day to honor myself and my needs. If I could go back and tell my younger self anything, it would be this. Your worth isn't measured by how much you sacrifice or how small you can make yourself to fit someone else's expectations. It's measured by how authentic you can be, how true to yourself, how willing to stand up and say, "This is who I am and this is what I need." Some people will respect that. Others won't. And the ones who don't aren't your people, no matter how much you might love them or want them to be. I finish my coffee and stand up stretching as I look out at the view I never get tired of seeing. Tomorrow, I have a big presentation at work. Tuesday is yoga with Jennifer and the group. This weekend, I'm volunteering at an architecture workshop for high school students, sharing my love of design with kids who might not otherwise have access to that world. My life is full and rich and entirely mine, and that I've learned is the greatest gift I could have given myself. Not the expensive apartment or the career success or even the hard-won peace of mind. The greatest gift was learning that I deserved all of it, that I didn't need anyone's permission or approval to claim the life I wanted. I just needed the courage to walk away from what wasn't serving me and toward what could be. So here's my question for you, wherever you are, whatever situation you might be facing. Have you ever felt invisible in your own life? Have you ever compromised so much of yourself that you forgot who you were before you started shrinking to fit someone else's expectations? What would it take for you to choose yourself, even when that choice is painful or scary or disappointing to people you love? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family? Have you ever walked away from a situation that looked good on the outside but felt wrong on the inside? Please hit that like button if this story resonated with you. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories about finding courage in difficult moments, and share this with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to choose themselves. Your experiences and insights matter, and this community is stronger when we share our stories with each other. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that you're worthy of respective space of a home, where you never have to apologize for being exactly who you are. May you find the courage to build that home, whether it's with others or on your own. And may you never forget that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from what's hurting you and toward what helps you grow. Take care of yourselves out there. You're more valuable than you know.